Hello everybody, Sophie Goose back again with another Glyos review video. Also, my dog is back. She's sitting right behind me and being the weirdo that she is. So if you hear any background noise, that's my dog wondering what I'm doing, sitting in front of my desk playing with action figures. So if you were here yesterday, I went over, well, at least yesterday from the time of this being uploaded, I went over these two bad boys right here, the Ledger AV robot and the Medibot AV robot, which will be going up on Cappy Space's Glyos page on November 14th, 2019. And I went over these guys in a little bit of detail, went over the lore that they're involved in, and relating that back to the EcoPod drop, which was the previous Cappy Space drop at the time of this being uploaded. Went over a little bit of the lore, went over all the fun little stuff you can see with these guys, extra little heads and all their little details with the tampograph and everything like that. And I hope you enjoyed it, because today I have something especially special to show you. So, fun fact, the shards of the Omeg, this militaristic group of the EcoPod that exists to protect the ecology and environment of the Glyos system, they're not just made up of, medical robots and military intelligence robots. Oh, no. They need to have troops. And it just so happens that Cappy intends to release a certain figure to represent those troops. I would like you all to see it. So say hello to the Patrol Hacker Nemesis. Oh boy, it's a pretty one. It's a pretty one. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the Nemesis figure, it is a figure produced by the God Beast, also known as Marty Hansen, who is most famous for his Kabutomushi figure, which is the kind of large rhino/stag beetle kind of creature that he's been producing for years. And the Nemesis was kind of the second figure along those lines. Marty is a huge fan of bugs and insects and entomology, and you can definitely see some of those inspirations with this figure. And the Nemesis is a very fun Glyos figure, because not only is it a very, very cool looking bug monster, but it also has a bunch of fun stuff that you can do with these parts that I'll attempt to show off a little bit. So unlike the Ledger bot, which we talked about yesterday, who has a slightly different shade of green. I think you can kind of see it there. Yeah, you can see that this guy is a little bit more pale, where this guy's a little bit more of a brighter green. So unlike the Ledger bot, who was kind of this different kind of bright olive color, the Patrol Hacker Nemesis is 100% Volcrian green, which is this kind of classical military green color that's been released in a lot of different Glyos figures, including Taskmaster Volk here from Warlords of War. And has been around for a very long time as a colorway with Glyos. And now we finally have a Nemesis that has been released in this colorway. It is a very fancy one. So allow me to just kind of give you a tour of fun stuff with this figure. So the first thing that always kind of stands out to me with this color scheme here is this kind of brown color that gets brought in as an accent with this figure here. You can pretty much headcanon this any way you want, but I would, at least with Ledgerbot here and that kind of thing, I've kind of been imagining these bits of brown as either like little leather bits of armor, so like gloves and belts and that kind of thing, or like maybe even as mud that they've gotten caked onto them while they're out fighting in the wild to prevent the destruction of the ecospheres across the Glyosverse and that kind of thing. Then this one's kind of interesting because he comes with this kind of nice, darker, secondary color of green on a bunch of his horns and pieces. And my favorite place to talk about that extra color there, I can get his head off a little bit, it's actually with the face here. So you can see that that extra darker green is on top of each of the horns and pieces here. But it's also, interestingly, on the little mandible bits here and also right underneath the eye. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but in person it adds like this neat little bit of depth around the eye where it looks a little bit more moist and alive, like you would kind of expect to see around an eye. It makes it kind of look like it's actually in there and like kind of has a little bit of a glint to it. It's a very cool effect, and I like seeing it in person. It's a little bit hard to see on camera. Get his head popped in there. So the Nemesis has a couple of neat tricks, but this guy has a couple of unique little pieces to begin with. For example, he has the Shards logo on his shoulder there. And my favorite part of this whole color scheme here, so if I can bring Taskmaster Volk back down, get this guy standing. Thank you. If I can get Taskmaster Volk back down here, you can see that one of the secondary accent colors for Volkrian as a colorway is very bright orange. And there's been a lot of different ways that different Glyos producers have used that orange as an accent. Sometimes it's only a tiny bit, sometimes it's quite a bit on the entire figure to kind of bring out the different kind of parts of the color scheme and parts of the sculpt. What I love about the Patrol Hacker Nemesis is it only has one little shock of orange, which are on these little barbs that are coming out of the claws. And I don't know why, but I love it. Like, I have to wonder what this little shock is. Is it like a little energy weapon that's like hidden in there? Like, when he swings his arm, does it like come out like a lightsaber in that direction? Or is it like painted that way to represent his rank? Or maybe it's there for when he's toddling around in the, in the mess hall and someone tries to brush up next to him. It's like, hey, watch out for the spike, it's pointy. That kind of thing. There's a ton of different ways you can interpret that, but I just love that there's that one little shock of orange right in there. So another neat thing about the Nemesis, which I'm sure some of the newer Glyos folks watching don't know about, is it comes with a secondary head, which is this lovely mantis head here. And in the case of the Patrol Hacker Nemesis, it has painted antennae, which wrap around towards the back of the head, which are done in that darker green accent. It's a little bit harder to see on camera, but in person, it's a nice little contrast in there. You can kind of doot that on top of there. Although I do recommend with the Nemesis head, this mantis head here, to very gently warm it up at the base of the peg and also the base of the chest here when you're trying to put it on. Either with some warm breath, like just gently breathe on it with some warm breath to try and get the PVC a little bit loosened up here, or very gently use a hair dryer to warm up the piece. Just the material that Glyos figures are made out of is PVC. It tends to respond to heat a little bit and become a little bit easier to pop in and out of the pegs if it's a little bit warmer. You could even kind of just hold it in your hand for a little bit and it helps out. Just because this is a very tall piece and it can be a little bit hard to get in there sometimes, but yeah, it's just a cool thing. But one thing that's really neat about the Nemesis is not only is it just a cool action figure to have of a big, terrifying wasp bug man, but the parts that it breaks down into are very, very useful. So I want to show that off a little bit. So for example, you can take his little claw foot here. We will bring in Taskmaster Volk to show this off. You can kind of swap that in. You have big old claw hands. Now, I've seen some people do some really fun builds with using the big claw hands on Nemesis, like using the Nemesis feet as big claw hands for their other figures. It can be very fun. You can also take like one of the actual giant lobster claws and pop it on there too. I've seen people use the Nemesis hands, so like these big claws also as heads. So you could have that on there as like a head on some sort of monster and have it be like a dragon head or like some sort of terrifying bug monster if you wanted it to. Yeah, the Nemesis is just really good for building. And in fact, I want to show off just how much fun that building can be. And also to show off just with Ledgerbot here, that Volkrian and this kind of foresty green that the Nemesis comes with can play together very, very nicely. So let me just kind of fiddle around with the pieces here for a little bit. But yeah, one of the fun things is just about Glyos in general, especially for newer folks that are just getting into it, is you can kind of mix and match across figures as you like. So for example, I could take this here, I could take Mr. Nemesis here, pop off one of his horns, slap it on there, have that as a little shoulder peg, and then throw that arm back on there. You kind of have a little bit of fun with it. Just gonna have this little horrifying demon arm creature. And then you can pop off the legs, slap on the Nemesis legs back on there. Just gonna have that wiggling and jiggling into place. I think that the Ledgerbot and the Patrol Hacker Nemesis in particular play together really nice when it comes to building. There's just something really cool about that kind of brighter green with the more kind of classic Volcrian green that makes for a really interesting contrast. I'm not sure how well it'll show up on camera, but so like you have this little guy right here who is equal parts Nemesis and AV robot with his little grub face. You can kind of see the contrast a little bit here with the darker green and then the lighter green. It just looks so nice to the eye with. It's kind of that nice little building there. And like obviously the little brown tampografts between the two different pieces also play together quite nicely. But I'm very happy with this. It's just such a nice combination of colors, and the whole wave just has like this nice congruity with different color schemes and color shades that are coming together. So like the tampografs on the Ledgerbot match or get very close to matching the Patrol Nemesis. It's just, oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And just the fun thing about Glyos is just coming up with your own little ideas and running around with ideas in your head. Just, throwing pieces together until you make something that you think is cool. Or just, having fun in general. And I think that this wave is really conducive to that. The Nemesis is just such a great figure for building around and having fun with. So it's nice to see him included here. And with the lore, it's just so much more fun. Just having this other military faction that's going around, and instead of being about taking over the Glyos system and having to stop the people that are trying to take over the Glyos system and just the continual back and forth, these guys have something a little bit different in mind, which is quite fun. I always love when producers come up with their own lore and add to the Glyos verse in their own little way. But let me just finish putting Mr. Nemesis back here together. It's quite the fun figure to play with. But get back in there. Get back in there. So Mr. Patrol Nemesis is back. We put Mr. Ledgerbot back together and we'll get in for a nice little group shot. But yeah, I'm very excited about this wave, and I think you guys are going to enjoy it a lot. There's also a ton of other stuff that's still in Cappy Space's store, basically, that are also sitting around. Like there's a really cool Redlaw Hacker Nemesis that's still in there. That's basically the Nemesis figure done up in translucent purple with silver and black for the accents. But say hello to your new wave of Cappy Space figures, everybody. I am very, very happy with these guys. They're such a nice little bunch with a fun little bit of lore that holds them all together. It really is quite enjoyable. And I like that there's been a lot of thought about, especially between the Ledgerbot and the Nemesis here, with the connecting color scheme and the different touches and Volcrian, but not quite Volcrian, that nevertheless plays together very, very nicely. And I hope you guys will enjoy this little set of figures when you get a hold of them. There's definitely something in this wave for everybody. But in the end, again, casual reminder, this stuff will be going up on the 14th of November in 2019. Link to Cappy's Instagram, his store, and other information will also be in the description. And I hope you all have a good one.